Recently I shared a video with 5 essential tips for beginner Dead by Daylight survivors, and you all asked for more. So today I'm back with 5 more tips to help you step up your survivor game. And make sure you stick around till the end because I've got a bonus tip for you that you won't want to miss. Tip number 1, greed your pallets. Let's start with something I think all beginners struggle with, pallet usage. When I first started, I had no clue about timing. I'd throw down every pallet as soon as I saw the killer coming. And I get it, when the killer is chasing you, your natural instinct is to throw the pallet down early and create a barrier. But here's the thing, Dead by Daylight is kind of a resource management game, and pallets are one of the biggest resources you have as a survivor. If you throw down pallets too early, you're wasting them. This is where the idea of being greedy with pallets comes in. Instead of immediately throwing them when the killer gets close, try to extend the chase by using obstacles and running loops. Make the killer earn that pallet drop. You want to wait until the killer is right on top of you before you drop the pallet. When done right, this forces the killer into a tough choice. Either break the pallet, which slows them down, or try to mind game around it, which can waste even more of their time. There is a balance to this. You don't want to get too greedy and end up getting downed because you waited too long. Practice makes perfect. With more experience, you'll start to get a sense of when to drop the pallet and when you can keep looping the killer for a bit longer. You'll also need to pay attention to the killer's perks. For example, if they're running Spirit Fury, which breaks pallets faster, you might need to adjust and drop pallets earlier. It's also important to note that not all pallets are created equal. Safe pallets are those that provide strong protection because they're located near key structures like windows that survivors can loop around multiple times before the killer can effectively reach them. These pallets usually force the killer to either break them or waste time trying to outmaneuver the survivor, making them reliable for prolonging chases. Unsafe pallets, on the other hand, are often in more open areas, offering little protection once dropped. These pallets can easily leave the survivor exposed if the killer can quickly walk around them or mind game their way through the loop. Then there's God pallets, extremely powerful pallets that are virtually impossible for the killer to counter without breaking them. These are rare but highly valuable, often found in strong structures like shack. Knowing when to use and preserve pallets, especially God pallets, can be the difference between a quick down and a long successful chase. Generally speaking, you want to make every pallet count. Pallets are limited on each map, and if you burn through them too quickly, you and your team will be at a huge disadvantage later in the game. A well-timed pallet can extend a chase by a significant length, and that's time your teammates can use to work on generators. So the next time you're in a chase, try holding onto that pallet just a little bit longer. You'll be surprised at how much more effective you become. Tip number 2. Avoid creating 3 gens. This is a situation where the last 3 generators are all really close together, which gives the killer a massive advantage. When this happens, the killer can easily patrol all 3 generators, making it nearly impossible for survivors to complete any of them. This can absolutely destroy your chances of escaping as a survivor. What's really important to understand is that this situation is completely preventable. It all comes down to strategy and awareness throughout the match. As survivors, you should be thinking about the map layout from the very beginning. If you and your teammates just mindlessly complete generators that are close together, you're essentially setting yourselves up for a 3-gen situation later in the game. This makes the endgame a nightmare because the killer can patrol in a small area, often leading to survivors getting picked off one by one. To avoid this, you want to focus on spreading out the generators that you work on. Early in the game, look around the map and pay attention to how the generators are spaced out. If you notice 2 or 3 generators close together, avoid doing them right away. Instead, prioritize working on gens that are further apart. This way, when it comes down to the final 3 gens, they'll be spread across the map, making it much harder for the killer to patrol them all. Communication is also key here, especially if you're playing with friends or a coordinated team. Let your teammates know which gens you're working on and encourage them to spread out as well. If you see that a generator near the center of the map hasn't been touched, it's often a good idea to prioritize it, since central gens are usually harder for the killer to patrol effectively. If you're in solo queue, it's a little harder because you can't directly communicate with your team, but you can still play smart. If you notice a teammate working on a gen that's close to one you're thinking about doing, switch to a further away gen instead. Even small adjustments like this can make a big difference in preventing a 3-gen. If you are struggling to work out which gens these are, try using the perk Deja Vu. This perk reveals the auras of the 3 generators closest together for the entire match. This insight allows you to plan ahead, ensuring you don't leave them until last. It is especially useful in solo queue where communication is limited, giving you a better sense of strategy without needing to rely on teammates. It also gives you a repair speed bonus whilst working on these gens, as they are often difficult to work on due to their central locations. So remember, map awareness and generator spread are crucial. Don't just think about the short-term goal of completing a gen, consider how your choices will affect the late game. It's a small change in mindset, but it will drastically improve your chances of escaping. Tip number 3, play as both killer and survivor. Now I know some people prefer to stick to one role. Maybe you're someone who only enjoys playing survive with friends, or you really just aren't interested in playing killer, but here's the thing. Understanding both sides of the game will give you a massive advantage, no matter which role you prefer. When you play as killer, you get first-hand experiences of the challenges killers face in trying to track down survivors, manage map pressure, and handle loops. You'll quickly start to recognize common survivor strategies, like which loops are strong, and how survivors use pallets and windows to waste your time. By playing killer, you'll get a better understanding of how different killer perks interact with survivor gameplay. For example, if you bring the perk Nowhere to Hide, or you play a killer like Myers, you'll learn how easy it is to see the auras of all survivors nearby. If you start chasing survivors at a loop, you'll see how quickly scratch marks can become confusing. If you injure survivors, you'll see how obvious they can be to find based on noise. This type of knowledge is invaluable when you switch back to playing survivor, because you'll now know what you can do to create more of a challenge for the killer to find you. Learning perks is another big reason to play both roles. DBD has a ton of perks, and the best way to learn how they work is by experiencing them from both perspectives. Start playing killer and try out all of the different perks available. Then when you do play as survivor, you'll start to recognize the killer perks you used and know how to counter them. Playing both sides of DBD gives you a fuller understanding of the game's mechanics. You'll be able to anticipate what the other side is thinking, which makes you more adaptable and effective. Plus, it keeps the game fresh. Both roles are incredibly different, and playing both helps keep the game exciting and challenging. Tip number 4, don't lead the killer to other survivors. Sandbagging is when you unintentionally, or intentionally, but let's focus on the unintentional here, lead the killer to your teammates and put them in danger. And trust me, this is something that happens a lot. Picture this, you're being chased by the killer, heart pounding, adrenaline spiking, and all you're focused on is staying alive. And without thinking, you run past a teammate working on a gen and hope the killer won't notice. But guess what? The killer definitely notices, and now your teammate is in trouble. They might have been about to finish that generator, but now they're forced to abandon it and run. This can completely ruin the team's momentum, especially if it happens multiple times in a match. So, how do you avoid sandbagging? First, you need to develop an awareness of where your teammates are on the map. It's easy to tunnel vision on the killer when you're being chased, but try to keep track of your surroundings. If you know where your teammates are, you can intentionally run in the opposite direction, leading the killer away and giving them space to work on gens or to heal. One great tool to help with this is the perk Bond. This perk allows you to see the auras of your teammates within a certain range, so you'll always know if you're about to run into someone. It's especially helpful for new players because it gives you a clear visual cue of where your teammates are, which reduces the chances of accidentally sandbagging them, particularly in solo queue, where communication with teammates is limited. If you don't have access to Bond yet, don't worry. You can still avoid sandbagging by paying attention to key areas of the map. Generators are often a focal point for survivors, so if you're running past a gen, it's likely someone could be working on it. Instead of heading straight for that area, try to steer the killer towards a less populated part of the map. If you have to run through a busy area, try to be quick about it and avoid lingering around your teammates for too long. Also, keep in mind that positioning matters. If you're looping the killer around a pallet or window, be mindful of whether that area is near an active generator or someone on hook. If it is, you might want to break the loop and find a different spot to avoid dragging the killer too close to your team. Yes, looping and extending the chase is important, but it's not worth it if you're leading the killer directly to your teammates. Tip number 5, prestige your characters. When I first started playing Dead by Daylight, I didn't fully grasp the importance of prestiging, and I regret not focusing on it earlier. Prestiging is when you reset a character's blood web to level 1 after reaching level 50, but the key benefit is that it unlocks that character's perks for all other survivors or killers in your roster. When you prestige a character to P1, their perks become available in the yellow or tier 1 version for everyone. At prestige 3, you unlock the purple or tier 3 version of their perks for all characters. This is a huge advantage because it means you can start mixing and matching perks between characters, which opens up a ton of different strategies. For example, let's say you love playing Dwight and you've unlocked his very useful tier 3 bond perk by prestiging him to prestige 3. Now, you can take that perk and use it on any other survivor, giving them all the ability to see their teammates. The same goes for killer perks. If you prestige Spirit, for example, her Spirit Fury perk will be available for all other killers. The earlier you prestige your characters, the faster you'll gain access to a wider variety of perks across the board. And trust me, having a diverse set of perks to choose from can make a massive difference in your gameplay. It allows you to adapt your builds to different situations and playstyles. If you're wondering whether you should prestige to 1 or go all the way to 3, it really depends on your playstyle and how much time you have. If you prestige to 1, you'll still unlock the perks for all other characters, but they'll only be in their yellow tier 1 version, meaning they won't be as strong. However, if you go all the way to 3, you unlock the purple or tier 3 version, which is the strongest form of that perk. My recommendation is to try to prestige all of your characters to at least prestige 1 as soon as possible. This will give you access to more perks for everyone. But if you have a few favourite characters you like playing, it's worth taking the time to prestige them to 3. This way, you'll have the best version of their perks available to use across the board. It's also important to note that once a tier 1 perk is unlocked for everyone, tiers 2 and 3 can still be obtained for each character in the blood web. Prestiging can seem like a grind, but it pays off in the long run. Once you have access to a full arsenal of perks, you'll be able to customize your builds, experiment with new strategies, and handle different killers and survivors much more effectively. And finally, tip number 6, play with friends. Dead by Daylight can be a really intense game, especially when you're playing solo. There's always that unpredictability, teammates who don't cooperate, random players who aren't on the same page, and just general lack of communication. While solo queue definitely has its moments, playing with friends can completely change the dynamic of the game. Communication becomes a huge advantage. You can call out the killer's location, warn each other about traps, or coordinate unhooking and healing efforts. It also makes the game a lot less stressful because you know your team is working together. One of the most frustrating parts of solo queue is when you feel like you're doing everything yourself, but when you're playing with friends, you can rely on each other and work as a cohesive unit. It also allows for better team synergy. For example, one person can run a decisive strike build to counter tunneling, while another person can run borrowed time to help with safe unhooks. You can mix and match your perks and builds to complement each other, which is something that's almost impossible to do in solo queue. It's a lot more fun when you can tailor your perks to support your friends' playstyles and vice versa. Another benefit is the learning experience. When you play with friends, you can discuss strategies in real time, point out mistakes, and share tips. Maybe your friend is really good at looping and can teach you better techniques, or maybe they've mastered a killer you struggle against and can offer some advice. This kind of feedback is invaluable and will help you improve much faster than if you were playing solo. And let's not forget, Dead by Daylight is at its core a social game. There's something special about surviving a match with your friends, or pulling off a clutch escape together. And even if things go wrong and you all end up on hook, it's way more fun to laugh it off with friends than to sit in frustration alone. The shared experience is what makes the game so enjoyable. If you're looking for people to play with, I actually host open lobbies on Twitch 3 times a week, and everyone is welcome to join no matter your skill level. We have a great community and it's a perfect way to meet new people and improve your skills in a friendly environment. So, if you ever get tired of solo queue, come hang out with us. It's a great way to practice, have fun, and learn from each other. If you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content. Also, feel free to drop any of your own beginner tips in the comments. I'd love to hear what advice helped you when you first started out. And if you haven't already, you can go back and watch the first tips video, which should be suggested here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the fog.